Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne on Global Voice Radio. Join Roxanne Derhodge and her thought-provoking conversations, the catalyst to live your life to the fullest. This is Denise Thompson, CEO of Global Broadcasting, LLC, and Global Voice Radio. And today it is my pleasure to have Roxanne Derhodge, one of our Global Voice Radio hosts. Roxanne hails from Ontario, Canada, so I'm so excited to have her as part of Global Voice Radio. And even though she's currently living in Canada, she is actually from Trinidad. So it's great to have this international personality as part of Global Voice Radio. And Roxanne has a very interesting and varied career. Roxanne is a best-selling author. She is a relationship expert, a radio talk show host, a therapist, coach, and founder of Authentic Voice Publishing. And I'm very excited to have time to introduce Roxanne to all of her listeners, to the other hosts on Global Voice Radio. And I am definitely looking forward to hearing what Roxanne has to share with all of us on her show, Authentic Living with Roxanne. So, Roxanne, welcome. I'm so excited for you to be here. I'm excited for our past conversations, getting to know you. And like I said, I am just blessed that you have said yes to being part of Global Voice Radio.
Well, thanks for having me. The opportunity just kind of unfolded, didn't it, when we were talking, because I thought we were just going to talk about resilience, I believe, and it just naturally led to you and I coming up with the idea that I should join your conglomerate of radio shows. So I was very, 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 very humbled to be asked, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity and being able to really spread my word about the things that are important to me in the world. So thank you so much, Denise.
So one of the things to start off our conversation about you, about your journey, your business, and of course, Authentic Living with Roxanne, your show on Global Voice Radio. Let's talk a little bit about you and your journey in bringing you where you are today.
Well, that's an interesting thing now that I have to talk about. I really have to think about it. But, I often say that my little brain kind of came up with the idea of helping when I was about 11. I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, like you had said, a little Caribbean island, and I went to an all-girls school, and which I loved. It really helped. In retrospect, I look back and I see the significance that having that camaraderie and that connection really impacted my life, because at that point there was some uncertainty at home with my parents' marriage. There was unfortunately a bit of violence and things. I had 5 siblings, and my parents I did the best they could, but what I found is that at that point I needed somebody to talk to. But guess what? Where does an 11-year-old go? I mean, I think they had counselors, but I don't even really remember talking to anybody. So I felt the need to really share with my friends, and we would do that on lunchtime. But what I started to realize is that not only did I feel better, but I also could offer that ear to my friends, and they felt better. And I kind of started to really find an affinity to sharing and also listening and helping. And then I thought, I wonder if I can do this for a living, at 11, 12 years old, not really realizing that it was something that I could do. But as I went on and really focused in on psychology, I realized, wow, I can help people. So that's where the birth of becoming a psychotherapist really started, when I was 11 or 12 years old. So.
One of the things that was so interesting about us connecting is the similarities in our backgrounds and how we started off as therapists, clinicians, and then as our professional life evolved, we are where we are today. But so tell me a little bit about how you came to Canada.
Well, you know what, the reality was that my parents, and I'm so grateful, and I think one of the inserts that I wrote for your new book on gratitude is they recognize the value of knowledge and education in the world. So they both themselves hadn't had the privilege of going on to school and really wanted to educate all of their children. So what happened was, you know, at quite a young age, they thought, well, we're going to send them all the way to school. There was one university on the island, and you know they wanted other options, so they sent us all the way to Canada to go to school at that point, and that's kind of how I ended up in Canada at that time, and went to University of Toronto, did a criminology and psychology degree, and then moved on and did my grad school in counseling, where I just, you know, I did have a job out of my undergrad, but what I realized is I was getting kind of bored. I actually was in business with my partner at the time, and I was good at it, but I was kind of like, is this all there is? Because I was 21 with my first degree. And then I started grad school, and what started to happen is I realized, wow, my passion really is people. Not that you don't get it in business, but I wasn't getting the same kind of feeding of my soul that I really started to get when I went back to grad school. And that's where I said, oh, you know, business is all well and good. However, my passion is really to help others, and going on to be, you know, a therapist that specialized in marriage and family therapy. And then I kind of took the route that a lot of therapists do. I started in trauma frontline with the police. At 21, you know, I thought, what am I doing? But like, wow, what a place to start. And boy, did I ever figure out what I was wired to do. And I had the certain elements that made me capable of seeing some things that were really difficult, but being able to cope and be able to help. So that was kind of my forage in. And then kind of went from situation to situation like you, where I ended up in corporate consulting because, you know, I wanted to try everything in the field, right? I taught, I was in trauma, I was a family therapist, and all those things. And then the corporate consulting opened my eyes, and I went on to work with one of the biggest corporate consulting firms in Canada, where I manage up to 40, 50 companies with different sectors. And then, you know, kind of after that evolution, decided to go out on my own and start my own consulting business, where the book kind of birthed that whole idea. And here we are today talking to each other about speaking and consulting and coaching.
Well, one of the things we could never have imagined the path that we have had. I mean, you grew up in Trinidad, an island in the Caribbean. I grew up in a small town in Iowa. And, you know, here we are talking internationally, right? Canada to Texas.
Right.
Talking about sharing our voice, sharing our messages globally on Global Voice Radio. We never would have imagined that. And one of the things I see us being able to do is to show other women and men that there really is no one way. There is really nothing to stop anyone from creating a life, even though we didn't know what we wanted to create. I mean, I think both of us love our lives now, and we were so excited about what is going on in our lives. We are modeling for others because we came from situations that were common, right? I wasn't born with a lot of money. I've worked, you have worked, we have achieved. And that's one thing with sharing our message. We help others to achieve also.
And I think that's so important, because I often said, you know, that little girl that felt alone, that wanted help, is real and so relatable to so many children in the world, that they don't know where to reach out. And I think being able to share, I think when you see someone like myself or yourself when I'm on stage, and the perception is like you've never been through anything. And I think that's what the whole idea of A Therapist Insider's Guide, my book, was based on, because what I intuitively did is I analyzed my own life. So I thought, here we are, right? Like, people see you and they perceive that there's nothing. How did you get there? Not recognizing that it's been a journey. It's been great, but I've had my potholes also. And to really, I want the average person that self-doubts themselves, that have had stuff happen, whether man, woman, or child, to be able to say, I have a goal or I have a dream and I can achieve it regardless of where I came from. I am not what I was exposed to, and there are things that can be done to be able to build that internal muscle to be able to achieve the things in life. You just have to figure out, what are the anchors along the way that I need to hold on to, because they're always there to be able to help me along. And I know I had immense help along the way. And I'm always looking for others to be able to help them along. So hopefully, in my show, but also all the other shows on your network will allow people to recognize that anything is possible. Really, anything is possible. But you just really have to break it down. You got to get around really good people, and you got to stay connected, because, those kind of, crazy monkeys in the brain exist in all our lives. But it's what you do with it to be able to quiet your mind that really becomes vitally important.
Right. One of the things that came to mind as you were talking, and you talked about having people around you, staying connected, and we need to ask for support and ask for what we need and what we want. Now, maybe the person we're talking to isn't able to give that to us. There could be a referral out of that. Or we then learned, okay, that avenue is not as helpful as I thought for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I can now go to the next avenue. I can now go to the next person. And oftentimes, and I think we see this more in women than in men, we are not asking for that. What the support or the referrals or the mentoring, or sometimes we are not willing to spend money for the professional guidance and mentoring and coaching to help us along.
And absolutely. And what we know, obviously, in the field is that when we're down, our instinct is to kind of shy away, right? We want to close down. We want to protect. But really what resilience is about opening up. It's about you recognizing that none of us can do it alone. And, I'm sure there's people out there saying, well, lucky for you, you've always had someone. And when I tell my story, when I was that young, even though I was around people, I didn't get what I needed without asking. So whether it's talking to a friend or reaching out to a colleague or those types of things, it's the power of learning to use that voice, which is the concept of your network and my show. Because what happens is, I'll give you an example. Just recently I was, thinking about doing a lot more speaking, and I thought, who am I going to talk to? So I picked one of the biggest speakers I could find. And he was, a friend of a friend, so indirectly, and I reached out. And this man lives in England. He took an hour of his time to be able to sit with me across the pond and share his wisdom of 25 years of being in the world of speaking. So what I recognize is, like, once you get, it's difficult at first, right? Because you think, who am I? Who's going to take the time? But there's so many people in the world that see the world as being abundant. There is so much for all of us. There's that and some. And when you actually, find the nerve to say, I've seen you, I've seen what you've done. Wow, I'm inspired. Would you mind? What you'll generally find is 4 times out of 5, those people will take the time. And before you know it, you've kind of met someone new. And then, that opens up a whole other door to other possibilities that you weren't even thinking about when you started to ask for the assistance in the first place. So that's kind of what's happening with my career. It's kind of, if I thought there was something, I thought, wow, I wonder if I can do that. And then I connected with someone, and then they said, of course you can do that. I've been doing it for years. So I think it's that connection and that natural ability to recognize that the more that I reach out in whatever capacity, it gets easier, and you actually find the right people to surround yourself with in the world. I think of the people that I'm around in the world now based on what all the changes that I've made in my life in the last 7 years. And that's what I dreamt about. That's what I visualized. I dreamt about myself speaking internationally. I dreamt about being able to get on stage, with the people like Les Browns of the world. I dreamt about being able to help the average person, things I hadn't done before, before I thought about it in my brain. So there's the element of connection, but there's also the element of, telling yourself that this is possible and taking the steps, small, daily, important steps that make things happen.
I think one of the things that was so important is the fact is taking those small steps. We don't want to be overwhelmed by looking at the whole picture or thinking, well, how many years would that take me to accomplish that end goal? Because we can start today putting pieces of the puzzle together. When we create a puzzle, we put it together piece by piece. We put together the foundational parts of the puzzle, the foundational steps of our life to achieve what that end goal may be. And every step we take is part of our achievement and is part of building us to where we want to be. So, Roxanne, talk a little bit about your decision to write your book and that process.
Well, what happened is I was always doing a lot, and sometimes that could be a good and a bad thing. So there's always a yin and a yang. So at the time I had a young son. He was, at that time he was 8. There had been concerns in my marriage. I would say about 7 years or 9 years in, kind of getting pregnant with him. But my ex and I kind of tried to work things out. It was not so good. I was excelling at my corporate consulting situation. I had great friendships, I had great family relations. Life was pretty good, but there was one gaping hole that I kind of tried to figure out, how can I make the changes? But what started to happen was that there was a couple of significant things that happened. Things were tough at home. My son was a complete blessing. But then obviously the pressures of being parents and being married, that was waning. I was, in Toronto one day, and I was walking out of a corporate meeting. I got knocked out by a complete stranger. I mean, physically knocked out. Okay. And I often say is, if there are angels, I think that angel may have been a dark angel, but that catapulted changes in my life that has never stopped changing from that day. So that happened. Then I physically had to, my jaw had to be realigned, those types. The concern was not somebody I knew, it was just somebody that was not well. And in my kind of slowing down physically and starting to really kind of look at what was happening at home, it really started to make me recognize I needed to do something differently. A couple months later, I got a severance package for my corporate consulting job, which was a big thing. So then finally I started to slow down even more. And then I started to listen more about what I needed to do to make changes in my life. And then I left my marriage. I said, I can't do this anymore. There had been a separation and reconciliation, but I think I recognized that it was actually getting worse. It wasn't getting better. But going through that process, what I did is I oftentimes compensated on all the other positive areas in my life. And I was kind of defocusing on the one area that I should have been focusing on. So in slowing down, that's what happened. I wrote about it. And people go, well, most people kind of, fall up in a ball and they, don't see. I said, well, I intuitively, because I'm a connector, I connected with people. And then I thought, okay, well, now I don't have a job. My marriage has ended. Okay, so I got to do something. And then I was also hurting, obviously, after I'd been with my partner since I was 18 and I was at that time 44. My life was, guess what? It was changed, and I just had to catch up with what I was going to do. So I started to write about it, and then kind of the idea of, well, why don't I just write it from the perspective of a psychotherapist that have seen relationships from the front line all the way up to CEOs, but I changed where I analyze my own life like I was the patient. And you can see at the cover of the book, there's a picture of me, but there's also a picture of someone, the back of someone's head. That's actually me. So I wanted to show people that, you know what, I've been through things, and even I had a blind spot. So what I did is I analyzed all relationships, and I came up with what I call a blueprint, where you could look at every area of your life, and the areas that aren't working for you, there's steps where you can actually create changes by exercises and things that I have you explore. And that's kind of what happened. It kind of started to be a diary, and then it ended up into a book. And then kind of that's how this, my consulting business started.
One of the, Roxanne, that you provided is the authenticity of looking at your life. And oftentimes, as therapists and coaches, that's difficult for us to do. Well, first of all, we don't really want to admit that we have problems. Because we're trained to help everybody else.
Right.
And sometimes we're like, well, wait a minute, I have all this knowledge. I know I shouldn't be angry, or I shouldn't be depressed because I can do these exercises, but we're human. And you've allowed in your book therapists, coaches, doctors, nurses, anyone that sometimes we put up barriers or we create the idea that we are stronger than anybody else, to acknowledge that we are the same as anyone else. We might know more tips and tricks to get out of negative emotions, but that doesn't mean that we don't have them.
Absolutely. And I think my example in the book is, and I'm openly honest, so in every exercise, I actually work through every exercise where I tell people what I was thinking or feeling or going through emotionally, and then engage them. So really, to some degree, I said, you know what, here I am. If you were to see me and not know me, there is no way in heck you would have known I was going through any of these things. So that element of I am a better coach and helper now because I was real with myself. So the depth that I'm able to get to with people to allow them to create the changes has gotten to an even more profound level. And we are people first. Yes, we have lots of credentials behind our names, but at the end of the day, I wanted people to look at me and say, wow, if she can go through this and she can make the changes, why can't I? Because we all can. As we know, every neuron can be changed based on pathways that are in our brain. So gone are the days where we believe that, I'm done by the time I'm 6. We now recognize till the day we die that, those pathways in our brains that fire together, wire together. So what a great time to be doing the things that we're doing in the world, because, someone that is maybe going through something tough that sees no way out, if they can connect, like you said, if they don't have it around them, reach out. There's always someone in the world that will take that time that allows us to feel connected again, regardless of what's happening in their lives.
Right. One of the things that you just mentioned about creating new neural pathways is in some ways the premise of live in gratitude daily. And you are now a contributing co-author to the book because it talks about our mindset. It talks about creating the mindset and lifestyle of gratitude, which affects all of our body. So we can change from seeing lack, seeing competition, seeing the glass empty or half full, to understanding that there can be a lesson, growth, gratitude, learning, and appreciation and thankfulness for everything in our life. And not that it occurs the very moment something happens. I mean, we're going to go through all of those other human emotions, but at a certain point, by creating an understanding of gratitude and how quickly we can switch our thoughts to gratitude, we're creating those new pathways in our brain, which affects our thoughts in our mind, so that we are more positive, and gratitude has shown to be helpful with resiliency.
Absolutely, because I often say to people, I just saw a patient now, and I said, we're going to get triggered till the day we die, right? Because a lot of people say, tell me how not to be stressed. And I go, all right, you want to get up, you want to get out of bed tomorrow, don't you? I said, because we all need to get up, have something to get up for, but we are going to be triggered. And negative emotions are always going to be, negative thoughts are always going to be there. But it's kind of like, where's the energy going? If you get repelled back into something that's tough, sit with it, learn the skills to deal with it, and then you don't have to spend as long. And every time you're able to come back a little bit quicker, that means you've adjusted your brain. Every time you sit in it, you reinforce it, but every time you pop out of it and do something, now the brain and the body has a different experience. It goes, whoa, I think I like this better. And then we might more than likely go to that. So that whole element of gratitude, even I just released a new edition of my book, and I wrote an epilogue, and what I talked about, it was everything that I've been grateful for, like even, my separation and the 25 years with my ex. I looked at all the positive things. I went through a loss. I lost my youngest sister last year. And that was the toughest year of my life last year. And even in that, I looked at, the love, the things that I learned, all the people that were around me, all those things. Toughest year of my life, but still, there was so many things that, and even in loss, now it makes me recognize even more why I should not lose a moment worrying about little things, because unfortunately life will still bring us those big things where we need that worry muscle, and we need to honor it. So I think it's like anything else. The more grateful you are, you focus on a different plane. And yes, things will happen, but at the end of the day, it makes life, that much more beautiful. And it is beautiful. Yes, there are bad things. Yes, there will continue to be things that will happen. But when you focus on abundance and what we see from something bigger than us, aren't we lucky? So I think I've in the last year, even more so, it's shown me the importance of that.
So, Roxanne, one of the reasons that we're talking today is that you are now a host with Global Voice Radio. Your show is titled Authentic Living with Roxanne. And so I would love for you to share sort of the mission of your show and some of the things that you're going to share with your listeners and talk about. And I know that there's probably some tips that you're going to share, definitely from your years of experience, your book, the things that you're doing in your coaching business. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think going back to that whole element of authenticity, what I hope with my show will be able to achieve is I hope to have guests on there that have really had a path where they're going to share their journey. And if they've been disconnected, I want them to tell you how and what they did to get reconnected, and what strategies that they do on an ongoing basis to be able to stay connected. And I've met phenomenal people along this path in my since writing my book and speaking. And what I hope is that whoever I have on there will be able to teach me something, and also you, because there's always something to learn about being authentic. I often say, this is the way I think of it, is we come in the world authentic, if you think of newborn babies. And what happens is, as we go along, we get pricked and prodded, and that authenticity almost gets hidden or shrouded. And like they talk about a butterfly metamorphosizing, it's the most difficult thing to go through, but it's so powerful at the end. And those are the people that I hope to have the privilege of having on my show, so that they can share their expertise, whether they've been through a sickness, or whether they teach people how to speak, or whether they are coaches in different arenas. These are the people that are actually living, walking the walk, talking the talk, but living authentic lives. So from me to be able to have someone on, they have to have something that has really resonated with me, that I think it's going to be a benefit to my audience. So that's weekly. That's what I hope to be able to achieve with my audience.
One of the things that is so important for us as human beings is to be able to get back in touch with our inner self, getting in touch with that authentic self. And it is difficult, and it's emotional, and it can be painful because we're letting go of a lot of things that are comfortable and we have learned to live with, and we sort of carry as a shield. And so, as you talked about the butterfly, in some ways, we have to let go of a lot of stuff, a lot of stories. But when we come out, that our heart, our soul, our spirit is free.
Absolutely. And I think that's the power. Once you've been through adversity, right? I often say you can go left or right. And if we look at the world, unfortunately, with how people are coping, some people are trying to find solutions, but they may not recognize that the solutions, even if it may be a temporary solution initially, that it's maybe, sending them down a rabbit hole. So my hope is that, people that are struggling, whether they're, doing drugs, or they're involved with the law, or they're in abusive relationships, or been through trauma, that they recognize that once they are able to learn those steps to be able to get reconnected, and don't let themselves be defined by what they've been through or what they've done, to connect to that core, deep, profound level within themselves, anything is possible. Is it painful? Absolutely. I'm going to tell you, I've gone through a ton of pain in the last 7 years, even more pain in the last year. But what I recognize is that I honor it, I bear it, and then I let it go. And that's something, because most of us learn in our society, more so in the West than in the East, to bat it away. And what happens is that just grows it. And with authentic living with Roxanne, what I hope to do is to, have people on that will talk to us about ones that have embraced the pain, worked through it. They're going to tell you when they failed also, because we want to hear about the real stories. And I think the platform that you've created, Denise, is a phenomenal one, to allow people to, if they've never felt that they've had a voice, to know that there's a way to connect with it, because we all have a voice. So that's what I hope people will get out of my show.
Well, I am looking forward to the show and hearing your expert tips, and also the lives and tips from your guests. And I want to make sure that people know how to contact you. So can you share your contact information?
Absolutely. So my website is roxannederhodge.com. That's RoxanneDerhodge.com. You can just go to the site. You can Google me. I will come up. Based on where you are in the world, I do have a toll-free number, which is 833-929-0131. So, or send me an email, which my email is just Roxanne@roxannederhodge.com. What I try to do is to get back to people within a 24-hour period, based on what's going on in my day. And I want to hear your feedback. This is a new experience for me. I have been doing podcasts for a while, but I want you involved. I want you to tell me what you really think. I want you to tell me if you didn't like something, because I want to know, how do I meet the needs of the people that are listening, because I want you to come back and listen. So hopefully you'll reach out and, give me a wave on Facebook, or send me a message if something inspired you. Or if there's a topic that comes up and you say, hey, you know what? I'd like to hear about XYZ. I know a lot of experts in the world, and I can probably source out someone if I don't know someone to come on my show. So those are the things that I'd really like people to do once my show begins.
So you can contact Roxanne through her website, through her Facebook page, and also connect with Roxanne on the Global Voice Radio page, and definitely join our Global Voice Radio Facebook group, because we want to have conversations with our listeners and have them know the hosts, right? So you'll be able to listen to the shows and comment, ask questions. So we definitely want communication with all of our listeners. And Roxanne, your book is available on Amazon.com. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, and also if you connect it through my website, you can also get a copy, either electronic, or if you wanted an actual hard copy, that's possible too.
So definitely connect with Roxanne if you have any questions or comments for her. Join Global Voice Radio Facebook group, meet our other hosts, listen to shows, communicate with us. And I am just excited how we are ending 2017 and how we are looking forward to 2018 and sharing voices, sharing messages, and creating impact throughout the world. So Roxanne, thank you so much again for joining Global Voice Radio. Thank you for your time today. And I look forward to all of the future endeavors and adventures that we're going to have.
Thank you. So grateful, Denise. So very grateful. And look, I'm excited for the opportunity. And I think 2018 is going to be the year. I can feel it.
Yes. So thank you very much. And I know that we'll be talking again soon. Join Authentic Living with Roxanne every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern on Global Voice Radio.